Recording. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chapter Leaders Advancement Series. Before we get started, I want to make sure that everybody has clear audio. And I'm also going to test your attendee skills. So if you can hear me, if you could go ahead and raise your hand real quick so we can make sure that we have good audio. Great, awesome, fantastic. Great. So welcome again, everyone. Tonight we're going to have a speaker talk about strategies and best practices for email communications. But before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. The first bit of housekeeping is we will for sure honor the hour. We're starting here straight up at 8 o'clock, and we will definitely end by 9 p.m. We know your time is valuable, and we're going to make good use of it during this hour. The second thing is our presenter, Scott, very much wants this to be a conversation and not just a presentation. This is your webinar, so feel free along the way to use the chat box as well as the questions box. So if you have questions as he's covering a topic, you can do one of two things. You can raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can ask the question verbally, or along the way you can certainly type your questions into the question box. And then I'll pause Scott and he'll be happy to answer those questions as well. So with that, I'd love to turn this over to Scott. Scott Pierce is the Assistant Director of Marketing for the ACR. He's been with the college for 6 years, but been in marketing for 15, and specifically has worked in email marketing for much of his career. He's worked on all sorts of campaigns with the college over his 6 years, and a lot of you may have seen some of his work specifically on RLI campaigns, and then more specifically and recently the annual meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to Scott.
Thank you, Tanya, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. And like Tanya said, we'll be very respectful of your time and make sure that hopefully we can provide things that are of use to you as you go throughout trying to enhance your communications via email with your chapters. So please feel free at any point to ask questions and raise hands as I go through this. I just have a few points that we're going to get across early on in terms of content and sending out emails, how you deliver them. And then I'm going to take some time to go through 3 providers that offer really great services to put together emails, allow you to manage lists and send out and gauge engagement. And so we'll take a look at that, and we'll even put together an email, and we can email you all out so you can kind of see how that works in real time. So without further ado, here is what I am hoping is that as we move along, when we do get to the end of this, that you all have been able to participate so that I know that I have not actually bored you to death. So with that, please feel free to engage so that I know that you're still with us. So one of the questions we always love to ask when we're trying to plan emails, and I'm sure that since all of you are ACR members, you know that we do in fact love to email you the same way that they vote in Chicago early and often. And so that's kind of what we boil down to is why are we sending this, when do we send it, and how? And so let's get into also the more important part for all of us really is how much is it going to cost us? So let's answer the real question of why. And the reason is because, like our good friend Stuart Smalley here says, because you are good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people do like you. And more importantly, you do have things that you do need to say, that you do need to get out there. Number one, it's a great way to connect with your community. And within any kind of chapter that you have or with any kind of business that you have, people can be diverse in terms of where they're located, but it's a great way to keep in touch as far as that's concerned. And by keeping in touch, that way you make sure that that you're not out of sight and not out of mind. And it fosters collaboration and really helps you to foster what you can do in terms of rallying cries. If you need to go up to Capitol Hill, it's great ways to keep that kind of information and also keep a pulse of what everyone's doing within your chapter. So that way you can also share different things about what everyone's doing. So it's a good way for feedback as well. It's also a good way for sharing of information. And in this instance, you can do any number of different things to enhance what your newsletters and what your emails can do. For example, you can pick something fun like this day in history, all these fun things. Some might consider this day in 1973 a dark day for music. but nevertheless kind of interesting that disc golf finally cracked the top 40. But any number of different things. So this is kind of fun and interesting and gets people to engage with content. You can also do something like a how-to. There may be a number of different things that you want to explain to your chapter leaders, or your chapter members, in terms of how to do a number of different things. For me, obviously, how-to fix anything, it wouldn't be that compelling because really, honestly, I rely upon duct tape or WD-40 to fix pretty much everything. But this goes back to kind of what I was talking about earlier with the whole keeping up with the Joneses aspect. You can do different things like spotlights. You can highlight member success stories. You can highlight what may be potential practice data in terms of volunteering in the community and how that may have bolstered their brand within the radiologist brand and connection with the community. And it's also a way to highlight some of the great things, because then what happens is you can create a dialogue, and that dialogue is great because your ideas start coming together with different people. You're able to help people with best practices, etc. So it's a good way to stay in touch. Part of what we want to do within our newsletters and our emails as well is a good call to action, and hopefully strong, so that way it can actually be heard. And so you want to make sure it's timely. A good call to action will be timely. You know, act now, early bird closes. Let's email your congressman. So make sure that it does in fact resonate with them. And also urgency. For example, hey, there's only 2 of these Hubba Bubba sodas left. And before you question it, yes, in fact, this was a real thing. I did have this as a kid, and it does still haunt me to this day. And make sure that wherever you want them to click is crystal clear. And here's a tidbit, and what I will show you within these email providers. Make sure that you put your calls to action in buttons wherever you want someone to click for the most part, because so many people, as you're well aware, think about where you read emails. You're reading them on your phones and your tablets, and trying to touch those links oftentimes can be difficult. Good best practice is to keep the amount of words to at most 10. I saw some statistics where something along the lines of people putting 86 words in a link, and I kind of thought to myself, someone must be quoting War and Peace and putting it into a URL link. But really, a button with a few words and making it clear and concise is the best way. That's when we always see statistics show that, and analytics show that people click on those much, much more readily. So the question always arises, what are we going to talk about? And that's a great question. And as we've always heard within all communications, et cetera, that content is king, and I'm going to say it's content and queen. And this always reminds me of one of my favorite movies. This is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. There's a particular scene where Steve Martin's character basically, he's a kind of a very just sort of private, anal retentive type of personality, and he's put together with Del Griffith here, or John Candy's character, and he just ends up having a meltdown because he just can't take it anymore, and he goes off and just starts going crazy about all of his stories. And one of his lines in it, and he basically says, when you're telling these stories, have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener. And that's readily kind of what we talk about when we want to talk about the content we're putting together for anybody who's receiving our emails. We really want to make sure that that the call to action, that what we're sharing is all pertinent information. For example, the how-tos are going to be something that's going to be beneficial for them, for practice, for any number of things. This day in history could easily relate to radiology, but it's also helpful because it helps engage readers with the content. Even if it is a tongue-in-cheek, etc., it still has a point to where it's engaging the readers, leading them to your call to action. And if you're ever looking for a resource, ACR is a great resource. We have enormous amounts of content readily available for you to be able to use and to share out with the rest of your chapter members. And like I said, we have a plethora of resources, and yes, I would say we do have a plethora of resources. First and foremost is our very own Tanya Coogan. Tanya is a wealth of information. She's a great resource to have, so there's her email address, again, if you need it. I hope you haven't lost it, because if you have, here it is again. But Tanya can easily connect you with anybody here at ACR that you might want to connect with, whether that be our economics department, our quality and safety department, our government relations, etc. Tanya is the great person and the source to go to for that. And something that Tanya produces is your chapter executive update that goes out every month, and this is what this lovely publication looks like as we send it to you, but there's a little section in there called News You Can Use. And in that, we recommend these are great things that you can simply copy and paste into your newsletter templates when you send them out. These are great pieces of information that any of our members could use, and we would want them to read about. And here's just a quick sampling of some ACR newsletters that we have. So this is our weekly member update, and it goes out every Tuesday. It has, generally speaking, a good 3 or 4 good resources there, keeping you up on some of the most important items that are going on within the college and within radiology as well. It also goes to advocacy and action. This is a great one to stay up on everything that's going on in terms of regulations, legislations, payments, etc. And then for those of you who do subscribe to the ACR Daily News Scan, this is a service that we use where we basically comb all stories that are out there and pull out anything that is related to radiology and healthcare, and they aggregate them all and put them into one email that goes out every morning. So that way it arrives in your inbox. You can choose to read some of it, save it, archive it, etc. But these are a great way for you to be able to pull stories and send them along and to share them along as well.
Hey, Scott, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a quick question.
Absolutely.
So when chapters are putting together their newsletters, I think maybe sometimes we feel like the content either needs to be unique or created by us, and what you're really showing us is that it doesn't, that it can be universally usable, or come straight from from their inbox.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be specific to. So if I'm in Montana and I'm doing a quarterly update for my members, and I'm doing 4 pieces of content, so what you're
The best way in terms that I always try to talk to any internal program here, or when we're producing, for example, one of the things I love to do is if we have I do a lot of education marketing. And so whenever we put together some new education and they ask me to market it and develop messaging, the question I always ask is, what would get you to A, pay attention to what I'm writing to you, and B, what would get you to invest time to not only read what I'm writing about, but then also to want to take a look at programs and then even register. I think that's a good rule of thumb when creating any kind of content is, would I myself stop and read this? Would I myself take a look in? Because really, when this world is so crazy with information, it's a fire hose really. And the CEO of Netflix, Reed Hastings, several years ago when they first started their streaming service, he talked about the fact it wasn't necessarily competition against types of ways you get your entertainment. It was just about the actual time people do have in their days for getting that entertainment and getting that information, because all different types of mediums were competing for those few hours that people had of free time, and so that's what you're competing for. And really, we are also competing for that time that you will have, and you all are extremely busy, and so really that's why we continue to test what we do for emails for that very reason, is that we want to make sure that we get you the most pertinent information and in the best way possible. And so same thing when you're sending it out. Yes, if it is specific to whatever chapter you're in, that's perfect. But you don't have to wait until you have 14 different things or even 5 or 3 specific to your chapter, because more often than not, the chapter members are going to engage more and open your emails much more readily than they will from ACR or other national services or other bigger associations, because it's more local, it's more engaged, and it's more personal. And so that is the advantage that you all have in terms of email engagement, is that because it is closer and because it is more personal, that the likelihoods of these types of emails being opened and read and then therefore acted upon is much, much greater. And hence the reason why we do stress the importance of good local communication, because it is much more effective than us always trying to come top down as far as that's concerned. And so that's why I did want to put this out here in terms of ways to gather content, is that we do have resources here from different places you can gather resources. Social media is a great place to see different articles, different things that are of importance. And one of the things that I've tried to do in order to make it interesting is to even ask a radiologist or a member, say, what are you reading right now, or did you see this article, do you have a specific comment on it or a specific point of view? because that also helps get dialogue going as well. And that's really ultimately one of the main drivers of what we want out of our emails, is to further the communication and further the dialogue. Otherwise, it's just kind of stale. It goes nowhere, and you just end up talking to yourself, essentially. So, thanks. And so the very first line of defense when it comes to anybody trying to get in to look at your email and what you're trying to do basically to entice them, invite them, intrigue them, titillate them, you really want to get them to open the email. And so here's just a quick few things. Like I said, again, because of the familiarity that the chapter members all have with the chapters and with you all, it's going to be a little bit easier rather than, you know, Coke or whomever else trying to get on and sell you anything else, or even HRs we try to market you as well. But here's just a few examples of different types of subject lines that you may want to try out. Short and sweet is always great. Think about the fact that, you know, just ACR sending out our emails, more than 65% on a consistent basis read our emails on mobile. And so, and I'm going to show you some tricks as far as that's concerned to make sure you can have the little text that comes up. We call it pre-header text, but short and sweet subject lines really do help because you don't have a lot of characters you can see as it renders in mobile, so that helps you get your message across very easy. So something like chapter challenge is a great way to do that. Asking a question is always engaging. You know, does this legislation make me look fat? So it's kind of funny and clever, but nevertheless, it also gets your message across that this is about a piece of legislation. The question does get people's attention much more so. They've gauged that statistically from a number of different email providers as they've looked and seen open rates for questions. An interesting headline. Here's one of the things that we've noticed at ACR in terms of the way we've tested stuff. For any of you who may have seen with the new weekly member update, but also within like Advocacy in Action, for example, what we've done, instead of just saying, hey, this is Advocacy in Action in the subject line, what we do is we pull out either the first headline or what we can perceive as potentially the most interesting headline and putting that out there, because that resonates with far more people than just simply letting you know what it is at any given time. And so we've seen statistically that many more people open and engage with the emails when we've done things like that, where we've pulled out headlines and put them in as actual subjects. So again, it's not short, but nevertheless, it does tell you what this is about, and it does engage people a lot more because it's much more interesting than something simple as, you know, like a chapter challenge, for example. Again, deadlines. This goes back to earlier when we were talking about content. Now, it's the same thing. You know, your subject lines can be deadline driven. You know, registration closes tomorrow, early bird, savings, any of that. Anytime you have less than, you know, a day or two for someone to act and you're reminding them about something, then you really want to remind them, and those deadlines are good calls to action even in the subject line. And numbers or lists within the subject line. 5 ways to better connect with referring doctors. Interestingly enough, one of the numbers that gets the most open rates is the number 7, believe it or not. So even though the top 10 list, you know, popularized by David Letterman, 10 is actually not the magic number. Out of, you know, a billion emails audited by a company called MailChimp, they noticed that 7 actually was the magic number where people engaged with it more and opened up the emails based upon that, which I found interesting. But lucky number 7, I guess, as it were. Now we're going to get into basically how we create these, and so here's going to kind of be the meat of what we're going to go through, because I'm going to walk through some of these different providers with you. So we're going to kind of switch off of the presentation here and go to the sites. Tanya, do you have a question?
Do we want to get a show of hands from folks on the line of who might be using, other than you know, PageMaker or Publisher or sending out PDFs? You know, who on the line right now is using an outside provider to build their email? So if you're using a MailChimp or Constant Contact or
anything else,
go ahead and raise your hand. Okay. We've got one raised hand. So if you're, thank you. So that's Laura out of Virginia. And then, so if your chapter sends out your email communications, your newsletters, just as a Word document or a PDF, if you could raise your hand. That's the most folks. So most folks are using, you know, most folks are using Word or PDF. So I think this next part will be very useful.
Yeah, and there's a potential worry that doing an HTML email blast will take more time, etc. If you are taking time to put together a PDF, it kind of comes down to something. It's very simple to put some of these together, and it will also give you a couple of different benefits. One of which they have things like, for example, MailChimp has something that's great. So, well, let me back up. Here, I'm going to show you real quick. So Russell Wilson is a quarterback in the NFL. And, we have
I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but I just had someone type in. We do have chapters that still mail and send physical newsletters as well. So maybe as we talk, we can talk a little bit about,
sure.
Like, is there benefit in doing both doing a hard copy and electronic version? Or
absolutely. And even a potential way where, and what I want to show you is the different tools that these providers provide in terms of being able to gauge interaction. And then that way you can gauge basically the return on investment of mail versus email. And that way you can see, well, my members really do want to interact via email, and you can do it that way. Because there's other things as you kind of become more familiar with them, you're able to do things like surveys right inside these emails that gathers them for you, and a number of different things. You can test to see things like subject lines, and the good thing about these email service providers is that they do all the back-end heavy lifting work to make sure that these emails are good for all email providers like Yahoo and Google and Microsoft Office and Gmail, and I know Google Gmail, but everything, and also they make it so that it's also built for both mobile and desktop, so all of that guesswork is taken out of it for you. So anyway, so getting back to this last part here, full disclosure, I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan of the National Football League, and Russell Wilson is their quarterback, and he was fond of saying, the separation is in the preparation. And I thought I needed a good catchy phrase that rhymed, and so here's what I put here: is the elocution is in the execution. I don't know if it has the same resonance, but nevertheless, it at least sounded pretty good to me. So as we go through for the execution of these, we've mentioned that we're going to go through and look at Constant Contact, which I believe is probably by far the most popular provider for small businesses, small groups, small associations. MailChimp is probably one of the biggest ones that's out there, and they offer a lot of resources. They have a lot of different blogs and statistics, and they consistently do research on open rates and things like that. They're a really good resource, even if you don't use them, but at least a resource for that kind of information. And this is one that's probably not very well known, and this is actually what I started on about 10 years ago and what I use. And it was originally done for those people that were basically that did emails for multiple clients or companies, for example, and it was really much more a tool for people that knew HTML code and things like that. In recent years, they have built up a really, really robust platform that's very, very easy to use. You do not need HTML at all, and in fact, you can't even get into the code anymore to do it once you build the emails in their system. But a very, very good platform, and it's actually what I use to do the Radiology Leadership Institute emails in. So with that, that's that part of the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go into first thing here within Constant Contact. So I am still working. So so for this presentation, as I was getting ready for it, I did sign up for a 60-day preview. And you notice over here, I've got 53 days left in my trial. And I can send up to an unlimited email to up to 100 contacts. So, or I can buy. So it's a great way to test it out for free and see if it's something that you like and see where you go with it. And I'm just going to kind of go through briefly what exactly how you set up a campaign, and I'm even going to take the emails that came in with the registration and then set up a list so that we can go through and see how really seamless and easy that is. And so to create your first email, we click on that. It'll open up for us here. And it already gives you a number of ready-made templates that you can go into. And so they've got all kinds of fancy stuff, but clear, straightforward. I'm just going to pick the basic newsletter here. You can either preview it or just select it and get right into work on it. You'll see how very easy the interface is to work with. It's basically drag drop. You can click on stuff. You upload directly from your desktop files, and it will automatically size and place wherever you need to. And so really, it's honestly just a click anywhere that you want to edit the information. And so right here, if I want to title my campaign so that I know what it is, that just pops it up right there and it timestamps it for you. That's perfect. And I can just put class webinar. There you go. It provides a default subject line for you. You can use any number of different ones. I'm going to go ahead with the old school hello world. So you can see here it's really simple. As you highlight any given portion, here we can offer this place right here. What you want to do now as you're looking through these templates and the layouts, it's great to immediately, as quickly as possible, identify who you are at the top of the email. So that way you can let your readers know who's getting, why they're getting it, who they're getting it from.
Logo.
Yeah, chapter logo would be the best as far as that's
Same logo, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So right here, I simply highlight it. If it'll click back on for me. Whoops, sorry. Or I can place the image. Oh, sorry about that. My browser or my mouse seems to not want to work. Okay, so easy enough that it actually does that, but there we go. Insert my image. And then you can actually upload to a library that will exist within Constant Contact that you can easily refer to. Generally, once you create a template, it will automatically have those templates that you can just duplicate so that you don't have to do this every time. And so you can just simply go to upload a file right there, and then go to your computer. I have a folder set up just for this, where I've got the ACR logo ready to go. So once I'm done uploading, I hit that. That's the one I want to select. I just click insert, and it places it for me. I'm not going to delete that because I don't need it anymore. So now that's right there at the very top of my email. And one of the things I mentioned earlier, and this is something to keep in mind as I talked about, on Outlook, you'll see a little window pop up down here. I just recently got an email from like Gaylord's Hotel, for example. But there's little text that's not a subject line, but that kind of explains what the email is, and we call that pre-header text. And so you can see it right here. It's giving you the instructions right here. Some readers see this part of your email after the subject line in the inbox. And so this is really your chance to go a little bit further than the subject line to explain what you're going to get, to include a call to action. But really, it's just like subject lines where you want to be compelling and you want to be creative and really get there to let them know what they're going to be getting with this email. And so if anything, you could just do something like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, sales on. And so you can clearly tell I come from a marketing background. I'm always trying to do something like that.
So if you were a chapter leader, would
Right.
you do something there, like if you were having an upcoming membership meeting?
Yeah, so this is,
so
thank you, so perfect.
CME opportunities at a state level. Would
Right.
you put that there maybe?
Exactly, you could easily do that. You could put that in your subject line if you had that like in your subject line. So you could do that. I would recommend if you were going to having that, you could just put get CME at chapter member meeting.
Okay.
So that's simple and straightforward. And then what you can do here is explain potentially, join us for our annual meeting, and get CME and free drinks.
There you go.
Something along those lines, right? So it's just a way to expand upon what that subject line is, and potentially it gives you two opportunities really, because what might catch somebody's eye in a subject line may not be for somebody else. And so that pre-header text gives you another opportunity as it pops up both on your mobile device and or like something like Outlook, for example, gives you another way to truly get people's attention in a different way. So don't repeat it, just expand a little bit and try to catch more eyes that way. And so then you can go in, and it's really just drag and drop here, and you can easily go in and just copy and paste from a Word document and enter in your text here. It's just like, you can see this WYSIWYG editor up here. It's very, very similar to what you would see in a Word document. You can change text any way that you want to. And the best part is, as you do this, you can preview this, and it will show you what it's going to look like before you send it out. And it gives you this great option here. Here's what it will look like in a desktop, and now here's what it will look like on a mobile device. And so you can see that it will take whatever you're doing and will automatically optimize it for mobile. You see that the logo has already been taken care of, because basically in their back engines, they've already done all the code necessary. It takes all the guesswork out for you. And then you can even send a test to your own inbox right directly from the editor here. And then you can get it in your inbox to see it, and that way you can truly test and see how things potentially render, because it's never going to look exactly the way it looks here. It's always going to look different in Gmail versus Yahoo, etc. They try to ubiquitize it so that it's good across the majority of the time across all browsers, and all email providers. But essentially you do want to test to make sure, because then that way you can send it along to others for proofing, and then you just want to make sure and test the links one last time before you decide to schedule it. And in a similar vein, I'll show you Campaign Monitor. MailChimp is similar. Here was something that we were doing a little earlier. So sorry, I just switched over to MailChimp. I did that a little quickly on you. But I just wanted to give you an idea in terms of what their layout looks like versus Constant Contact. So here again, we've got the logo. This one was for Education Center. You can go in. It's got the content for you. You can edit it. You can add a link if you want to link it to somewhere. For your logo at the top, I would always recommend you just simply put in the URL for whatever your homepage is. If you don't have one, then you can just go ahead and leave a blank. So then you can, again, it's all just really simple of clicking inside to edit. This will open up just as editor in here. Same thing, go to WYSIWYG just like you have in a Word document. You can copy and paste. You can highlight text, and you can change the font, the size. You can go up to really small, really big, however you want to. And if you bullet points, links, etc., it's all there. They try to make it as easy as possible for you. And again, drag and drop, really easy to move stuff around. Once you get out of it, you can hit save and close. If you want to add different elements, you can do text, box text, any number of different things. It allows you to kind of play around with it. Dividers are things you want to put in between elements to try to create division, so you can just simply put it in where you want to. If I wanted to put it here, it drops it right there for you. You don't need to edit it. So then you have that divider that can go in within your different layout there. One of the things that MailChimp has that I haven't seen with the other two is they have something called the send time optimization. This may or may not be relevant for you, but I just thought it was kind of cool that if you do have a large amount of members, what it does is it will start tracking when they open the emails. And once it gets a pattern of say, okay, well, Dr. Smith opens almost all their emails between 7 and 8. When you hit send time optimization, it will send Dr. Smith's emails out between 7 and 8 a.m. If Dr. Jones opens at 8 o'clock at night, it will send Dr. Jones's emails at 8 o'clock at night. So you're sending at the time based upon their behaviors of when they're going to open them up, when they have historically opened them up. So that's a good feature to have. And then lastly here, this is Campaign Monitor. As you can see, again, I use this a lot because I've sent out a number of different emails for RLI. Campaign Monitor, Constant Contact, and MailChimp, their analytics are all very similar, so I figured since I have the analytics here for RLI, I could just show you really simply. Again, it tells you when it was sent, how many people it was sent to, who opened, and click rate, and things like that, and you can then open and see a good analytics snapshot here in terms of that. And a couple of things, it's great you can see links so you know what people are interested in, for example. And the other part, too, that's really helpful is that it will tell you email client usage. And again, this is the same for both Constant Contact and MailChimp. But this gives you a snapshot. So 41% on iPhone and Gmail and iPad. We're looking at a very large percentage of mostly mobile as far as that's concerned. And so we know that we want to make sure that the emails are optimized and easy to read on mobile devices. And that's a great piece of information to have so that if you are out and you've heard back from members, that they really say, look, I'm reading this on my phone at a time when I'm off of work and riding a train, or you know, I'm at my desk and doing some reading, I'm taking a 10-minute break or something like that, and they're going through emails on phones, that this is a great way to disseminate information to them in a way that's easily digestible for them. And then just to quickly show you the interface here for Campaign Monitor, and then I'll just go through real quick and show list uploads, etc. So this is just a simple asset test that we were kind of tinkering around with what the Health Policy Institute might potentially look like. And so you just, once you set it up, you go into the content and you'll kind of see some familiar elements. They all just kind of add their own little twist on how they lay it out. So again, it just becomes how you get familiar with it and then how it loads up. Sometimes it takes a long time. Let's see if we try that again. It's thinking about it. I guess it won't load.
Quick question, is there any, so as I look at the folks that are on the call and I think about our average chapter, you know, we have chapters that have anywhere between, you know, 150 members and over 5,000.
Right.
But, you know, generally as a rule, folks are going to be sending these emails to less, you know, 1,000 or less.
Sure.
Is there one of these tools that you think gets you, you know, a better return on your investment and all that good stuff? So is one rate better than the other? Because they all seem to be pretty user-friendly and have some really nice tracking mechanisms. But between, you know, the Constant Contacts, MailChimp, and I know that a couple of our chapters, at least 2 or 3, I know Connecticut and it looks like Rhode Island maybe, also uses MailChimp. Is there one that you might recommend for our chapters, you know, being moderately sized?
You know, moderately sized, they're all pretty similar. You know, like I said, Constant Contact is a very, very popular one.
Okay.
In terms of the size. And like I said, I just clicked on a lot of the pricing so that you can kind of see what it would look like. A lot of them, so this one, it really kind of depends on the size of list that you have for a lot of them, and then also the amount of emails that you want to send.
Okay.
So this list is based upon right now what we're using, right? You can see right here it says choose the plan that's right for you based upon 5,884 subscribers.
Okay.
So this is what it would cost. Right now we do it on a per email basis. And across the board, usually it's $5 per email and then 1 cent for every contact. So if you're going to send out and you decide, you know what, quarterly is the right time frame for us. We want to make sure we're in touch, but you know we don't want to overburden, and that's really a good amount of space for us. That's 4 emails plus, you know, if you have 500 people, that's $5 and $10 basically, okay, essentially to send out that email. So that'd be $40 to send out your emails for that year, and you can kind of pay as you go. It does get cheaper if you sign up for this. You know, if you send out a lot, then you go to basically we're going to pay a flat fee. And so I would just weigh those costs because Constant Contact would come in here. And so because we don't have a list, you can see how much cheaper they are, right? So if we go in, as your list grows, that means that's the amount of emails that you're sending. One of the other things, too, that's important, and another reason why I would recommend using any of the service providers is that because they've built a very massive reputation, they have ISPs, which are ranked very high and safeguarded. So if you send out from like Outlook, et cetera, you can, and if it's sending out basically from your own IP address, et cetera, you can actually become blacklisted essentially or get knocked against you because it can get marked as spam, or it can be any number of different ways that might catch phishing. So if you are doing things like save $500 off, or here's something free within subject lines that will trigger that kind of thing, it could actually come back to hurt you. Whereas using this, they have dedicated ISPs so that way it makes sure that it's safe, that makes sure that it's spam guarded, et cetera. So that way, if you're our mailing members, they can just simply unsubscribe, et cetera, and they guard it so that if people are sending out spam through their system, they delete that account and they make sure that nobody's abusing their ISP for that reason, that they want to make sure that people's communications are getting through and that it is a good line, essentially, that it's quality. So that's something you can keep in mind with this as well. So it's really, you know, like I said, Constant Contact is fairly inexpensive, 0 to 500. You can see the differences. You can kind of go through the pricing here. You know, if you have between that amount, it's going to pop up to $40 a month. You can go to the Plus plan here. with their tools and customized templates. And that's again a business decision you have to make. I don't necessarily know if you would need that for what you're doing in this sense, but if you are emailing more than 10 to 15 times a year, that may be something to consider. But you're always going to get reporting. Constant Contact has image and file storage. I don't ever have to really use that because I just put them in within campaigns within the one I'm using, so it's not entirely appropriate for that. But if you do have to have additional services, if you are on staff somewhere and it's a larger one and you are going to be doing a larger promotion where you're thinking, okay, look, we're going to have an annual meeting or et cetera, we would like to drum up as much support as possible. They do have things like promotion and registration that you can integrate right here that you can see. So there are additional tools that you can kind of take a look at and see and try out. Again, these are all fairly cheap, so you could ideally, I shouldn't say ideally, but I know you're very busy, but if you do have the time to even you can get an account with all three. I have an account with all three right now. Account with all three, and then just test them out to see which one you like. And then you can send free emails through all of them, usually with Constant Contact. Like I said, you have 60 days to send up to 100 emails on small lists. Campaign Monitor, you can send emails up to 5 people for free as you're kind of testing things out and seeing how it works. MailChimp also has similar types of things to where you can, so this forever free plan, if you're under 2,000, you have a certain amount of sends that you can get up to. So basically, they consider a send. If you send to your members, if you have 300 members and you send it 5 times, that would be 1,500 sends essentially. So MailChimp actually offers something very easy and free to kind of do as far as that's concerned. This is a cheap, free way to kind of get going within the system. Yeah. Like I said, they're huge. They have massive companies that use them, and they have a really, really robust community that offers a lot of support and offers a lot of tools as far as that's concerned. And like I said, you can take a look and see what they have in terms of, you don't need to look at any of that stuff unless you're truly interested in getting into more of the nerdy stuff when it comes to emails. So it really is just a matter of kind of your preferences. So at that point, I just want to go ahead and go back here and just show you one last thing real quick. Here's a real simple way to show you, and I'll just do this through Constant Contact. I'm going to go ahead and just going to send out and just show you how basically to schedule this. So here's our class webinar draft that we had, and it's really easy to just go here and do what you need to do, but I'm going to go in and edit it because I want to show you some of the ways that you can, if you have a list, for example, and you can determine the importance of what you want on your lists. For many, you might want names, email addresses, and I generally like to have a first name and a last name. You're fairly familiar within your chapter, so I would recommend that because as you get used to these, you have ways of being able to input personalization. So you can have, Dear John, Dear Jane, and you can have a letter or a call to action. You can actually put names in and things like that. So that's always something that's good to have. So as I go through, it goes through, and you can edit the email address that it comes to and who it's from and the name and everything else. You can send now, you can schedule it later, so that way if you're not going to be around in a couple of days, you can schedule it to go out that day, you can get it ahead of time. But right here at the very top, add email addresses, and then you can type them in, but you can also go back up here to contacts. There should be a place for us to go ahead and upload a list. So it has me, and now I can go ahead and default view. Sorry, they changed this around on me.
So are you uploading an Excel spreadsheet probably?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, this should have been easier. Well.
So do all of them have the capability of doing something similar? Because all our chapter leaders would go onto the chapter portal and probably download their
so
member list from there, and it would end up as an Excel spreadsheet.
Perfect.
You can
perfect.
download
Yeah.
them all, which is good to know.
So if Campaign Monitor is actually going to work, and again, I could show you very simply in that. All right, so here we go. Sorry, let me put it up. Just quickly upload from a file. It's very easy, and it shows you all the different ones. I've already got names emailed, so you can just go ahead and it'll import. And then it shows you after it imports right here all of the different names, etc., and how it's going to look. Click Next. And this is very important. It's going to ask you this, and it's okay because of the way that this is set up. We're all compliant, and we've taken care of all of that for you in terms of ACR. Anybody who's joining as part of this, that's all part of the member registration process, etc. So you're okay to add this. There are no issues there. Once you upload the list here in Constant Contact, it's going to ask you which list you want to put it into. We've created that one for the webinar, and then we just finish. And then great, it tells us that they were all added, and then here's what it looks like as far as that's concerned, and very easy. And you can eventually just click on them. It gives you details about the amount of different types of the emails they've received and kind of what they've done in each email, if they've opened it, and how they've interacted with it. So it's all a really easy process. And this will take care of all of your unsubscribes as well. So you never have to worry about it. It's really you can turn the thinking off. If somebody hits unsubscribe because they really don't want to hear from you, it automatically removes them. And if you ever have to upload the list again, it will remember the fact that that email address is opted out, and it will not allow you to add them. You can go back in and do it manually, providing a reason if someone says, oops, I accidentally unsubscribed. But the best way to do that, though, is they have abilities within all of these to create forms, and you can create a sign-up form on there to have people resubscribe. But that's also a good way, is that if somebody does unsubscribe, you can basically tell them that if you do unsubscribe from our newsletter, the next chapter leader or chapter party is going to be at their house or their practice, and they're the ones who are responsible for all the hors d'oeuvres. So that's a good way to make sure that they stay active within your subscriber list. So at any rate, that was kind of the nuts and bolts there. I want to leave any kind of last few minutes here for any questions. If anybody has something specific they want to go over, I'm more than happy to go over that. I know that going through all of that is really sort of kind of a maelstrom and can be kind of daunting as far as that's concerned. So in that vein, I just want to go ahead and leave you with my email address. Please feel free to use me as a resource. If you decide to try these out and you're into it and you want to email me and ask me questions or set up a time if I want, I'm more than happy to jump on a conference call or just like a go-to meeting with you to kind of go through things and to kind of help you through setting up things and templates and colors and logos and everything else and testing. I'm more than happy to do that, more than willing to help you out in any way that I can. So please feel free to reach out to me, and if you do by chance lose this, you know where to find Tanya. She can contact me. So more than happy to help. So if there's any questions, please lay them on me. If not, thank you very much for your time, and I hope something has been useful to help you with your communications.
I do have one question, and while I'm asking this, if anybody, again, we've got about 10 more minutes, so if anybody has any questions or input, I know a few of you on the call do use a few of these, so if you have any feedback on any of these platforms, it'd be great if you wanted to chime in, raise your hand. I can call on you or type it into the question or chat box. We talked about subject line, we talked about catchy things like that. What about the from? This is something that I've wondered.
Yeah.
So when I send out my chapter executive update, it comes from T. Coogan, because I kind of think that people want to answer or read my emails, but there's an option to send it from a generic chapters at ACR box.
Yeah.
Is there any evidence on the click-through rate? So in all of these, it looked like you could change the from. It could be from Scott Pierce, or it could have been from ACR.
Yeah.
Which one's better? Best practice.
Best practice is basically whatever you feel, whatever's best for you. I mean, really, honestly, as far as that's concerned. Now, obviously, you don't want to put a name on there of somebody that hasn't consented. So, but oftentimes what we do is we like to send out invitation letters or letters from the chair, and those always get good responses because people know that it's coming from a specific person. And they've consented, they've worked with us on this letter, they're just using basically our distribution because it's for ACR business to send it out. And so if you as the chapter leader or you as a staff, executive director, et cetera, are really well known with the vast majority, I would recommend using your name. Again, this is a personal outreach. And so that's why I strongly recommend devising some kind of email strategy, whether it's a quarterly newsletter or whether it's a couple times a year for different things like congratulations or annual meetings or in the know or holiday congratulations, year end, whatever. It's good because we want the chapters to be close and tight knit. We want you all to be much more familiar, first name basis type of thing, because it makes the power, the potency of the chapter more when that's the case. And so I would personally, for me, I would want to send it out. If I were in part of that, I would send it out for me because I would want that familiarity, that connection with it.
Okay, that makes sense. And we just did have a question from Dr. Nichols from North Carolina, and he's asking about would we be able to help the chapter create an infographic that highlights advantages for membership recruitment? And the answer to that really is yes. Most of you, all of you on the call are hopefully actively promoting the chapter challenge, and the past 2 phases of that campaign have had infographics that we've sent, and we've created them straight from our desk. So, membership really is on everyone's mind, certainly at the national level, and I know at the chapter level. So,
and if that's something that's going to be useful, I think that probably one of the things that we could do is that we could create basically a template, and then that way you could plug in, and we could have certain pieces of information, but then also places where you could put in things specific to North Carolina or whatever chapter you're in order to help that outreach, because I think that a lot of it ties in both nationally and then locally as well. And so that might be helpful that we just had that as part of a chapter toolkit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'd be happy to do that, because I think, like Scott said, I think they're national things and that can be on both of those. So sure, I'm happy to do it. That's a great question. Thank you. One last question. How important is it to have, for a chapter to have social media policies as a guide for email campaigns? That's a great question.
That is a great question. And one of the things you probably may have noticed on there, I did go through it very quickly, but they all have ways to share your emails on social media. I think it's important that the chapter does have at least a minimum social media policy to kind of understand how you all are going to interact on social media, because that becomes in the public domain, it becomes sort of a public voice and a public face, and then also reflects on you, on ACR, et cetera, in the national conversation. So I definitely would recommend having that kind of policy in place. As that extends to emails, again, if the newsletter is to the point to where it's the thing that you want members engaging with, I honestly would promote it on your social media, because again, it's another place where people are putting their attention. If they are following your chapters within social, it's a good way to potentially catch them at a time that they may not be looking at emails, et cetera. And it's always good to put the newsletters out there. It just promotes more of your information that's out there. One of the things that social also does, there's a benefit for it, is also if you have either your chapter portal, which is going to be helped by the fact that it's on ACR, but if you have your own website and you can put some of this information that's on there that you're putting out in the newsletter as well, and that social then links back to it, that helps in terms of your search engine optimization and your page rank and things like that. Sometimes that can be more important to some chapters versus others, or how you're trying to find information, but that does help the more that you have content that is linked to from multiple sources. So that does help in that regard. So it all kind of feeds off of itself in providing a greater ranking and greater credibility too. So it does help websites as well. So, but I would absolutely, yeah, you do need to have a policy in terms of what your chapter is going to share via social, and then also determining what from an email, if you're going to have an email get posted, and make that decision before the email is created.
So I think that's a great question, and I think that's something that we can certainly poll the chapters and see what folks have out there, and get a template, or at least get a few models up on the portal, so chapters that don't have it can certainly use that as a guide.
Yep.
And I think we have time for one more question. Someone wants to know, is there a better time in the day to send communications to members?
That's a great question. We, in our own email system, have been using the send time optimization. and that seems to work. It's over a 24-hour period essentially. So if somebody opens it, like I said, at a given time, then they're going to open it at that point.
When do radiologists open emails?
Right. I mean, I think that ultimately,
midnight?
yeah, I know that's kind of one of the things is I have sent them at night before, and that's why we're on a webinar at 8 p.m. Eastern time, because we know people have the time to do it. But you know, I've talked to numerous, hundreds of radiologists throughout my time here. You know, visiting trade shows, RSNA, people coming through ACR and Education Center, et cetera. And interestingly enough, I'm sure you probably are all kind of the same, is that, you know, you're at your desk and as you're doing readings, et cetera, oftentimes you are kind of checking emails throughout the day there on your phones. And I think that's probably why our mobile rate is as high as it is. Yeah. And so interestingly, we want to create a better mobile experience on our website, and we're in the process of trying to do that for you all. But I also think that might be why people come to our website more on desktop but read our emails on mobile, is because I think a lot of radiologists are doing it. So in terms of, to try to answer your question directly, I test that. I kind of play around with it sometimes. I do try to take into account that, which none of you will really have to take into account because you're all going to be in the same time zone. But I have to take into consideration that if I send something at 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, it's 4 o'clock in the morning California when I'm sending it out through Campaign Monitor, because they don't have that send time optimization. So I want to make sure that it's at least 7:30 in the morning California if I send it out. So I'm usually sending it out 10:15 to 10:45 in the morning. They tend to have that there so that way throughout the day, or later in the afternoon towards the end of the day.
Okay. Awesome.
Tested out in the middle of the day, didn't get as well received.
Okay. Good to know. Anyone else? We only have about 1 more minute, but anyone else have any questions? No. Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you so much. This was time certainly well spent, and I sure appreciate your time. Everyone who's on the call, thank you very much for your questions and your comments throughout the session. And just a quick reminder, one, anything we talked about today, get in touch with me, or you can get in touch with Scott, and we're happy to help you test these, build a better newsletter. If you don't have a newsletter, we're happy to give you the content. Really and truly, we truly are here to be a resource for you. And the second thing is, if you want folks from your chapter, your executive committee, your board to be able to access this webinar, we'll likely have it available on Monday on the Chapter Leaders Advancement Series YouTube channel. But I'll send out a blast email letting everybody know that it's available. So anyone who wasn't able to be here and be present can go to the YouTube channel and access that. And with that, I will bid everyone a pleasant evening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks, Scott.